pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, starting off, we'll do citizens' request to speak on non-action items, but since we only have two speakers, we can go ahead with Jeannie Castro. If Scott would like to go first, that's fine too.
Like that? Okay. Good evening, School Board, Mr. President, and Dr. Nicolette. I would like to address the fact that our schools and these buildings are our most valuable asset. Number one is why you're entertaining the idea of already selling these schools. You know the value. When I spoke with you, Nick, before the vote, you had said that people already were calling you about buying these schools. But there is a greater value that if we keep these schools, then we don't have to build a new school when our population increases. And the likelihood of that is very, very good. In the last few weeks, I've been talking to so many young people, people with families, people who are projecting they want to have a family, and that's why they moved into the downtown area or out by Holton. And some of them don't even have children yet, or they have children that are under the age of 5. So they're not documented yet. They really want these educational situations that we already relinquished, but I think that we really need to hold on to these schools so that we have this potential to keep or reevaluate the situation later. I know that to build a new school would really pose a great expense for our taxpayers. So I want to just express the value of keeping these schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. Scott Ellingson. 2 minutes, Scott.
Like a lot of people, and certainly including Jeannie, I'm certainly grieving the decision that was made in October, but I'm here to talk about something else. So I don't know how many of you got to go. I think Molly might have been there when I was, if I remember right, but I don't know how many of you went to Suzical the musical or the Home for the Holidays concert. I know I went last night, so I went to both. We have a family tradition of going to both, and I guess the main point I'd like to make is, obviously we are so blessed with so much talent in our district and so much hard work by the students and the parents helping out, and the great direction of Ryan DeLaCroix and Jamie Polbicki and Carrie Heisler and so many others, and we're just so blessed with that. And I just come away thinking, wow, I should expect so much more from my students because they can do so much. And I'm really blessed that in the same chair I have Macy Menarchek in my class. In a different class I have Nariah King, who was JoJo. And what was amazing to me was Macy right away, I would guess that she would do things like this, but Nariah was this very quiet student, and then there she was, JoJo, and just doing this amazing work. But I guess my main point is this. At the end of the day, hopefully all of our students, or many of our students, end up at the high school, no matter what elementary school they went to, no matter what kind of situation they had, any changes they've had, and they end up at the high school, where we have so many great opportunities, and the community can just be so proud with whether it's athletics, music, or other activities. And I just think that's the thing, the big picture we want to keep in mind is having a great district and knowing that at the end of the day, we're all gonna, well, most of us hopefully, as many as possible, end up at the high school and just make us shine and make us proud. So that's all I wanted to say tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott, and very good comments about the programs that we are lucky to have and witness as a community here at high school. So moving on to reports, we have a school board election, where Nick is going to comment.
Yep, just a reminder, school board election, April 7th. So we have put the class whatever notice in the paper, is that right, Tim? Last month, you saw a lot of them for all the different school boards and other municipalities. Up for election are Megan Rosowski, Maria Rudy, both board members. It would be for a term that begins April 27, 2026, expiring on April 22nd, 2029. So the candidate file date to file for school board to run is Tuesday, January 6th, no later than 5 p.m. on that day. And then be right here at the district office. Tim Miner would be the person taking the applications for that. So if there is a primary needed, which means there would be more than 4 people running, there would be a primary that would be held on Tuesday, February 17th. Any questions about the upcoming school board election? All right.
Hearing none, you're still up, Nick.
All right. So I had the honor today to head up to New Richmond Ford, or Johnson Ford up in New Richmond. Got an email from them last week asking if we'd be willing to come up. They wanted to give our school district a donation. They didn't give me any other information other than that. They said they were, celebrating 100 years of being in business in New Richmond, and they have multiple dealerships. And so I said, okay, we'll come up. And there were multiple community organizations that got checks today from the New Richmond Ford dealership, Johnson Ford, up there in New Richmond, and they awarded the district a $4,000 check to be used. And so one of the things we're going to do is we're going to kind of do, this was Bonnie's idea, to do a mini kind of competition with our buildings to say, people have some ideas that need to be funded, or activities or projects that they'd like to see funded, because there were no strings attached to the money. Principals to be able to submit ideas for their buildings, and we take a look at them and either give all the money to that idea or fund a couple different ideas with it. So really a great opportunity. Like I said, had no idea that this is what we were walking into, or the amount, and so it was really great, but wanted to make sure we put that out there. It's not often that we have a business in another community that is offering to give us money, so. All right, that's all I had on that donation.
There are no comments. We'll move on to topics for discussion and possible action. I would look for a motion for approving consent items 1 through 3.
Mr. President,
Yes, Megan.
I make a motion to approve the consent items and that the Chief Financial and Operations Officer be authorized to pay bills in the amount of $165.37.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second by Kate, and I think Andrea is looking at me like she's got something. Oh, no. Oh, okay. If there are no questions, we'll do a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Hearing none, consent items are approved.
Mr. President, now
Thank
it's
you.
my turn. So I always am excited to celebrate the retirements that you guys just took action on. So want to talk about the specific people that you approved tonight. First up is Kelly Curtis. She's a school counselor and currently at EP Rock, and has been in the school district for 16 years. We also have Tim Chuckle. He's been in a variety of roles over the years, but currently is assistant activities director and a computer science teacher at the middle school. He's been in the district 30 years. Tammy Holland, paraprofessional, a regular ed paraprofessional at EP Rock for 5 years. Then we have Rachel Miller. She's a 3rd grade teacher at Rivercrest currently, and again, I think been about every building at this point, and 35 years of service to the district. And Carla Willoughby, who's a speech and language pathologist at Rivercrest, and she's been in the district for 6 years. So again, I always love this time of year when we can start recognizing these people, and then looking into the recognition banquet this spring, where all of our retirees will be celebrated.
Thank you. Wonderful. I hate to lose these valuable employees with all that extended. As Tim Chuckle talked about, going right into the sub pool, I hope, or anything.
Yes, this is a steady or a consistent conversation I have with all of them, and I have commitments from Rachel too, I think. So we're going to be pursuant to the rules of WRS. We will certainly be using them as subs.
Okay. Anybody have anything to say? Okay. Moving forward to our visitors tonight, MGT demographic report. So, Nick, you want to take over?
Yes, so go ahead and let them kind of get set up in front of us. So this is kind of the unveiling of the demographic report that MGT put together for us. Lauren and Maya have been working with the district over the last couple months to get our data and working in the district as they've driven, and they can kind of talk through a lot of those pieces in what that looks like. But looking forward to what they have to say and what this process is. And I think, asking questions from board members at any point is definitely okay.
Yeah,
Dialogue's
we're
fine.
not opposed to having ask questions.
So, all right, I'll turn it over to them.
Yeah, we're really appreciate y'all having us out here. Missed the Zoozical. We knew that was happening, but we came in today, so sorry. We were driving development last month. She spots the sign. I'm like, oh yeah, when is it? Oh no, we're not. It's, yeah, if you had a weekday showing, then we would have been there for sure. Again, I want to thank you all for having us here. This is an important subject within K-12 throughout the country, and understanding the enrollment shifts that are occurring within our society. And it's not just a Hudson situation. It's a situation probably 80-90% of the other school districts. As Nick probably has told you, I work with other parts of the country. I'm with the board president in a Los Angeles school district that's in the Bay Area, kind of the same conversations right now. The other part is it's a California district, so they're losing kids in other parts because they just can't afford to live in the area. So you have all that fun stuff. Tim, I'm going to point to you when it's time to go. Yes, sir. So our methodology, we'll talk about methodology, our spatial data collection. When we're here, we're just not meeting with staff, we're actually driving around and getting a feel for where are the schools, one. It's always nice to have a map. It's another thing to understand the layout of the district. But also, it's important for us to drive up
Ask you
on.
a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Could you talk to us just initially about your company, how long you've been doing this?
Sure. Yeah. No, that's good. That's a great question. So I've been doing this. I was an accountant early on out of college. Imagine that. Great personality for accounting office. I did forensic accounting for 10 years, and then I got into, I've had 3 arcs in my career. So I was an accountant. I did operational analysis for a food manufacturing company. It's one of the largest ones in North America. All stuff you didn't go to college for. Okay. One day I decided, I had a call for a friend of mine, Nick knows the story, I had a call for a friend of mine who was an anthropologist who was gone to do a presentation in Chicago, and she wanted to attend a thing called GIS Day, but didn't know what it was. I said, hey, Lauren, can you go attend this for me? You understand things quicker and understand technology better and can explain it pretty well. Can you go to this and find out what GIS Day is and what GIS is? So here I am in my mid-30s going to this thing held by a bunch of 4-H kids, discovering that you can take tabular information, convert it into maps, and be able to spatially show what's going on in the world. Blew my mind away. 20-something years ago, this happens. Go home, tell my wife, you know what, I think I want to go and go back to school, get a certificate in this GIS, and really figure out, because I was doing it already with the accounting part. I was doing it already with the analytics with the supply chain. It's just I didn't have the mapping component. And I was working closely with athletic organizations in Southern California and using the GIS for exactly what we're doing now. Understanding where their participants lived and where they were not participating from, IDing the underserved areas. I found this company called Davis Demographics. While doing this work in Davis Demographics, I was hired as an analyst for early on and the project manager, and then suddenly became their person that talked about GIS to people at school district level and county-wide, explained how GIS works and kind of get it across to, it's not just tabular information anymore. We need to be able to look at where things are. That was almost 20 years ago now. And I've been doing that with now MGT. MGT, when I was a partner with Davis, we merged with MGT. And so now what the best part about what I'm doing is that now Maya and I have a question. We just don't sit there in a black box and not know how to answer that question. We can text somebody in our firm that may have a question about curriculum. You know, my mom was a teacher. That's as much as I know about curriculum. But I have somebody I can call right away if there's a question that comes up or something else. So our company is a six pillars of operations. Our major components are TSG, Technology Solutions Group. We're number 2 E-rate solution in the nation now. We own 3 server farms, solely own 3 server farms, and maintain our own enterprise security and storage systems. That's the nice thing about this. So when Nick and I are talking, I can walk around with a laptop and there's no data. I just have to log into a secure server and then pull the stuff down. So there's no more of this. It's very, very cool being in this organization and doing what we're doing. Maya, you want to tell us a little bit about what you're doing with the company?
Yeah, I definitely have not been a part of the company as long as Lauren has been.
Yeah.
But my background is in food insecurity work. And so what I was doing there was using GIS, or this mapping software, to kind of map out enrollment trends in like federal food programs. So here now I've been able to kind of work on using those same skills in mapping, using those same skills in like data analytics, but now associating it with like school trends and things. So it's been really interesting. I'm still pretty new to this role, but I've been able to learn a lot just at Hudson as well. So it's been great.
Well, Mike comes with us with a fresh set of eyes. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you know, Nick and I look at the same thing for 3 days, realize that we missed something, and Maya picked it up, or something like that, right? Gentleman is going to come in after and talk a little bit. He's on his way. He's probably halfway here. Is Dr. Lance Richards, former superintendent of schools in Indiana. He's now working with us, doing community engagement. He has a background. He was a newsreader out of college. He did TV news work. You'll see these camera ready when he comes in. He's not like me. But does that help you out? Good.
And Lauren,
Yes,
you've
sir.
worked with other districts in Wisconsin, Minneapolis.
Yeah, so a good one is Kenosha. Kenosha's my Chris up there for years has been. They've been trying to get the point across they had to close schools, and at one point there, I think the facility director, who had been working with us as on the software side for years, had this problem. He goes, "Hey, we have to close schools. There's just, I'm telling people we're under enrolled." And it took him having to basically leave. He left the district out of frustration. And Chris called us up and says, "Hey, what's going on? You know, I think you know what's going on in this area. Yeah, you guys need to close 7 or 8 schools." "Yeah, I don't know if we need to or not." I'm like, the numbers, the last 8 years continue to say you need to close schools. And so we went up once all the dust settled, we went up there and helped show them what needed to be closed, why, where the locations, you know, some of the stuff that all that knowledge base had left. And so we had to come in and basically fill in the gaps, what I knew from my interactions through the years. You know, we've worked in Milwaukee Public Schools. I helped bring in our software solutions to their CFO, their finance department. Several of their staff have been trained up in the software that we work with. They work with that software. A lot of large districts will license what we're doing for you all because they have staff internally that can do this. But yeah, I've worked with districts that are what I call campus districts there's one property and there's like 2 or 3 schools on it, like a little liberal arts school. I worked with districts like that, and I've worked with the state of Hawaii with 13 separate districts and all the different islands. 13 separate superintendents. Imagine that. That's always fun. So I've worked with districts that are state agencies all the way down to the 700 student school district. Is that good? Yeah. So when we're working through this, there's a methodology. The methodology is not a black box. We're going to tell you how the cake's made and how the ingredients go into this, making this cake. I have a colleague that uses food analogies, makes everybody remember and get hungry by the speed up the process for the meetings. We'll talk about spatial data creation. the words make it sound really fancy. We've taken the student file the last 4 years and geocoded the kids to the world. Allows us then to understand physically the physical locations and how those changes have occurred over the last 3 to 4 years. We also start looking at other factors that go into this, birth factors. How many houses are being built? Are there a lot of houses? Where are the houses being built? What type of houses are they? And then providing a district forecast. All this is the foundation to help create and understand other things that are occurring within the district. Okay, Tim, hit it. So our methodology. We take, in most cases, most districts are affected by 3 different items that are occurring in their area, unless you're in California, where there's no housing development happening because of the costs and things. There's a lot of housing that's dropped off. But first component of this is understanding the births in the area, because you have to understand that earlier in the meeting, sometimes you just don't know where the kids are coming from. You know that there's young families, so you look at the historic relationships to how many kids were born in the area and how many will actually have shown up to help understand what births you could expect. Mobility factors, the center one. Some people will hear mobility, and some people in the business office will get excited because mobility. You're thinking about ins and outs of some districts, ins and outs of apartments and things. That's true. That's kind of like mobility. In this case, the term mobility for us is an internal statement. It's a spatial cohort analysis where we're looking at where kids were in kindergarten the last 3 years and where they are in first grade the next 3 years. This kind of like a cohort analysis that you do tabularly to understand where to expect children enrollment-wise. We're looking at physical locations. And there's going to be an output of that called a mobility forecast or mobility analysis. And you'll see a spreadsheet that represents the various elementary areas. The cool thing about that is you have these elementary areas, but within the elementary areas are kids that attend from pre-K, 4K, all the way up to 12th grade. So someone goes, hey, well, Rock doesn't have 12th graders. It sure does. The kids live there. There are 12th graders that live in that zone. It helps us understand what are the shifts in those zones. And the last part of this are the drive-in development, looking at the houses. Everybody's, we see housing development. We even traveled and visited some of the areas outside the district that are areas where kids are open enrolling in some cases to the district. And so being able to have that information then allows us then to apply the factors and to produce a student forecast. Keep in mind, when you look at the student forecast, the base year is this year's fall snapshot. Tim, next. So just a snapshot of what's going on. We collected your schools, your attendance areas, 4 years of student data. We took you have your zones, right? And we took the natural splits of the zones, and then we split them even further into these more refined planning areas called study areas. So your zones are now split into 241 of these study areas. And they follow things like the old rail line or waterways or not, interstates. There's only so many ways to cross over an interstate, and it's not walking over it, that's for sure. But looking at those, looking at the development, and then understanding the other analytics that are going on there. So we have some spatial tools that show the relationship of historic students also. Maya was really kind enough to have all that stuff ready for you all. And there's some really cool maps too. So you want to geek out, we get to the spot, you want to stop and talk about them? Cool. Thank you, Tim. So, pardon me. The basis of this has to start with student files, student data. So we were working with the district to make sure that we had the correct student information. We have a verification process that's like in county, taking a look and making sure that you have the correct amounts that are that align with what was reported or close to what was reported to the state. And then looking at them and then just doing some really basic analysis. In this case, we say it's basic, but for some folks, they might find, oh, wow, that's really cool. It is cool, by the way. Those are your study areas on the map. And those study areas, anything that's in color indicates the areas of the greatest change over the last several years. You notice that, what was that dark color out there, Maya? Maya does it because
Yeah.
I'm colorblind, so I might yell at, what color is that? The darker color that's like red?
The pinkish color.
Oh, pinkish color, yeah, thank you. Sorry. The darker color, dark pink color are the areas that have had the greatest rate of loss the last several years. These are actual changes within the population. So start looking at those areas, you start thinking about those neighborhoods, right? And then you got a few areas that have some growth, natural, they've been growing in some cases. And those are gonna be those little blue areas. But really what's interesting, we take away from this, if anything, it's not the decline or the growth areas, but more of the areas with very little change or static. Is that interesting? Especially when you start looking at the smaller polygons near town. Because the smaller the polygon, let me digress a little bit. Smaller the polygon. The polygons are split in the way that not only do they follow street lines and things, but they also are adhering to some other rules. We try to make sure the splits have at least 50 to 75 students in each one of those polygons. So when you get into smaller polygons, it means there's 50 to 75, it means it's a denser area. And so it's interesting that you're down in town and you start seeing that there's very little shifts in that area. There's decline, in fact. Okay, Tim. This is my favorite. Does everybody like a nice density map? Is it just me?
I like all kinds of maps.
Oh my goodness, okay. All right, so if you thought about the district, what were your first ideas about where all the kids are? That's why I always ask people, close your eyes, where do you think all the kids are in this district? When you drive around, you kind of already know they're south of the interstate. Well, you geocode the kids and you can generalize them with a density map to show, of course, yeah, you have a lot of them that are below the interstate. Very cool, right? What's one of the challenges for the district is that you have a very some highly dense neighborhoods right in that little peninsula there in the center of the district, where it straddles the attendance zones. And that's on purpose because there's a neighborhood there that has some of the, some really large numbers. You couldn't split it. I'm sorry, I couldn't keep to the rule of 75 kids. I think there are like 100 kids in one spot. But I think you already know those areas. Thank you, Tim. The attendance matrix. That's the next step. We've done some mapping, mapped the kids, and we have the zones. And now we understand, or now we start to show the spatial and visual relationships. So we already know where kids are enrolled because we get an ADA report, right? Average daily attendance report for a zone where they're enrolled. Well, that's that column. So as of that snapshot date, that's how many kids that were enrolled, like Holton there. It has 218 kids that were enrolled at the snapshot. If you look down that line, so if we start at the column at the top where the school name is, that highlighted area that's gray, I know gray is, gray with the white number, that's how many kids live in and are enrolled at that campus. Pretty cool. If you go down, you see North Hudson. You'll see that Hudson has 4 students that are going to North Hudson, or from North Hudson, pardon me, to Holton. So you have 4 kids that are going up to school there. Maybe the family works out of town on the way out of town or something, right? Who knows? But what we use this for, it helps us understand, do we see any funny little outliers in the numbers? Do we see like a classroom of kids that are attending a campus that doesn't make any sense? Typically, when we see stuff like this early on, it means, oh, maybe there's a boundary line that's not in the right spot. Maybe some kids are supposed to be both sides of the street, it's supposed to be at a school or something. In this case, there were no red flags that went up. This all made sense when we started reviewing it. So the top line, Holton has 218 kids that enroll at that campus. But if you see that 203 number, there he is, just in time. If you see the top number where it says count of students living in the area boundary, Holton has 203 total students that live in their attendance zone. So not that many more than are actually living there and enrolled there. Now, why is this important? Well, it's important for a couple things. It helps us understand if there's any spatial relationships that we need to focus on, that maybe we're bringing people in that maybe they should be going to another school. We shouldn't be open enrolling, or maybe we should be open enrolling, those things. But on the next slide, Tim, shows us what those numbers actually, what's the impact of those numbers. So there's a resident number. So there's the 203 kids that live in the area that Holton, compared to their capacity. The capacity, in this case, the capacity is set in the way that it is in relation to the kindergarten through 5th grade student population, so their ratios for those schools. Well, it's at 69%. With kids that are attending outside and living in there, the enrollment's 218. Their utilization now goes up to 74%. And what's nice about this, allows us to start adding some other context to what's going on in the district, like Rock Elementary has 12 kids going out and 26 coming into their area, or 19 kids coming in from into Willow River Elementary School. These aren't really big numbers that would cause me to be startled. It's just that it looks business as usual. You know, there's some cases where we'll look at 286 kids. There's a district in Illinois, same layout, different side of the river, and they had like a total of 140 kids attending outside the area. Finally, I said, why is this? Oh, we forgot to tell you we have an open enrollment program with the neighboring campus next door. That's all I need to know. Perfect. It's a known anomaly, what I would say. But it helps us understand a couple things. Basic math, there's 1,000 empty seats right now in the elementary school system, based off of the school capacity for 0 through 5. That's a pretty big number of empty seats for elementary. Go ahead. So the next part of this, we know where the kids are, we geocoded them, we know the attendance areas are great. We start looking at the other factors, birth factors. The district had for a time had a few more students born in the area up until recently. You know, now the new average is around 300 kids born in the area. What's kind of interesting is that, you know, we kind of buck in the system and the trend of the national trend, where nationally it's about 3.5% drop each year in most parts of the country. Some areas have an increase because of inward migration to offset it, but most cases, districts in most areas of the country are seeing just a decline in birth counts. And that's nothing, by the way, that's nothing we're gonna solve tonight.
Mr. President?
Yes, Megan.
So one question I have, when you talk about births in the area, are you measuring births to women who live in those?
Birth to those zip codes right there, those are from the state. That's where those children, the moms are from.
Okay,
Yeah.
great, because I know a lot of people go have their kids in
Yeah,
Minnesota, you know, what your closest hospital or preferred.
Yeah, it's nice
is.
having the relationship with the health department, the health and statistics department here in the state, because we're able to send a quick message over and they know, oh yeah, they need to know this, and not the song. Yeah, we had, the nice thing about Wisconsin is Wisconsin keeps the numbers really well. In fact, the only problem is I couldn't get a, you know, because it's not 2025 yet, so. We're not done yet, so I wish we had a 2025 number, but it is what it is. There's some states where they still have haven't officially announced their 24 numbers. But you all are pretty lucky. Go ahead, Tim. There it is, mobility factors. Boy, this chart, this looks like a really busy slide. Mobility factors help us understand what the shifts are within a neighborhood. We look at the neighborhoods that have not had recent development.
Hey, Lauren, real quick to interrupt,
Yes, sir.
you're going back to birth rates, because this has kind
Yes,
of
sir.
come up multiple times. Because it does look like birth rates are up, and then you have it sitting at 99.7.
Yeah,
Can you
so-
kind of talk what that is? And then also, when you look at the birth rates of being 102, 103, it's compared to the base year, is that correct?
Correct. So so when you're looking at, okay, we have so many kids born, it's like the calculation for mobility. You have so many kids that are there, what's the difference that we can expect the following year? That's what we're looking at. We're looking at the difference. What's the difference we can expect based off this? There's a natural increase that's occurring because the last couple of years have been the lowest. In fact, next year we'll have that same impact because it's a couple kids shorter than 300. When we look at the outgoing years, 5 through 6 or 6 through 7 or 6 through 10, I mean, we're taking into account some other information. We'll look at the actual collection of students, and you all sit at, what, 280 or 290. So all the kids that are born here, about 290 show up to kindergarten. Where they at? Capture rate. But when you look at some other calculations, the actual shift in population projected through the census and the ACS comparison, you're seeing a slight decline in the next 5 years, out past 2031. And the reason behind that is they're taking into account also that the numbers are staying low. So that's why that's set up the way it is. It's reflective of a static population.
And just, so the 99.7 is coming from just a general population analysis and the trends of where you're seeing birth rates going?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, anybody enjoy the statistics class in college? Yeah, right? Megan, good, you? So if you remember, when we're looking at stuff, we gotta be careful how we apply micro numbers to macro. And so some cases we can probably apply that, but looking at it based off of experience, it's not appropriate. Let's look at some other analysis. So we pulled the ACS numbers and looked and said, the census is also, everything seems to be flat except the younger students, the 0 through 4 kids, or 0 through 4 population. It actually shows it declining from 0.12 to 0.10. So in this case, it would have been 10%, but we're not going to do that. I think this is more appropriate. And the other thing is, when we get out past 5 or 6 years, we're trying to get ahead of the bigger mistakes. We want to make sure that the next 3 or 4 years we're ahead of. If there's something further out, maybe in about 2 years, we see something else, let's revisit it. But in this case, this has been this seems to be what this is the appropriate methodology for what we're doing right now. Okay, Tim.
Mr.
Yep.
I have a question actually clarifying. So, and again, just because this has been a focal point of conversation in the community, so you're using the American Community Survey, ACS.
That's right. And
You're drilling down to Wisconsin specific to
Correct.
look at that. So
Yeah.
you're pulling in and saying, looking at 0 to 4s within the state of Wisconsin, and through looking at that.
no.
Okay.
Oh, I should probably, we actually have the ability to scale down to the district level.
Great. So you're honing in on the zip codes within that touch our district specifically.
Yes.
Perfect. And so what we're seeing here is essentially a flat trend, and they're giving you a 99. I want to
No one's giving
drill
us
in.
anything. We've come up with the 99.7 because it represents what looks like what's occurring in other parts of Wisconsin.
Okay,
with our
which is
clients.
essentially flat, no change
Yeah.
for the next.
After year 5 or 6.
Okay, so after.
So these the first several years, that's if you look at the kinder year, So 2026, 27, 28, and 29 are the ones that are hard-coded numbers. And if you see it, and as Nick brought up, you'll notice that it's because the other reason why it seems elevated is that you're a swing of 8, 9 births. So you just gotta be, you know, how do you apply it, right? Okay, mobility, thank you. So, people ask, oh, you know, how do you track the ins and outs of the district? Well, we look at the existing established neighborhoods, not the ones that are having recent builds, because we're collecting that information based off of development. Where we have another part of that we're adding to this. So, a good example, let's talk about this. So, if you see an area that's below 1, that's an area that loses a, you know, there's a loss that from the year before to this year. So like, for instance, Houghton's case, the first 6, was it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 grades, they show a loss each year. So kids that were born, or pardon me, kids that were in kindergarten last year, if there were 100 of them, you would expect 99, or you should expect, we have been expecting or receiving 1 less each year. The same thing holds true for first grade to second grade. Third grade, you start seeing it, you see a greater difference. And then once you get to 5th to 6th grade change, the kids that were there in 5th grade you're missing 7. If there were 100 kids, you're missing 7 by the time they get to 6th grade.
Mr. President?
Yes.
And so then this is the net. So if you had 2 students move away and 1 student move in, you're looking at all of that at the same time.
And we're not looking at specific families, we're looking at specific geographies.
Yep.
Specific. There's this many kids that were there.
Yep.
And they're not there. And because I'm like the accountant in me, where's our accounting people? Our accounting people, we take the Excel tables of the enrollment, line it up, offset it, and calculate the change. I already know that every single CFO and CBO in the nation already has this Excel sheet, they just plug it in each year once they get their approved ADA number. This is similar to that, except we're looking at spatially. Because it allows us to understand what are the areas that are aging out, what areas are in the existing neighborhoods are seeing less of the young families.
And then 5th to 6th being lower, that just means there's fewer 6th graders.
Less
than there
6th
were
graders
5th
from the year
grader.
before, yeah.
And you're still looking at, within the Holton attendance area, looking at the middle school and looking at the high school.
Yeah, we're looking at student populations.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we're looking at that zone as a zone itself, as geography. And you'll see, if anybody hasn't said anything yet, you'll see people start saying, oh, look at 9th grade, the 8th to 9th grade change. Of course. That's very common in an area that has a strong parochial program. You have kids that start to show up. There are some areas of the country where we work with where, there's multiple high schools, and you'll see the kids leaving the private school programs and coming into the middle school, so they feed into the feeder pattern to the specific high school. You'll see that jump up around 6th or 7th grade. In this case, this is typical of a district that has a strong parochial system in the area, or other school options. And then you'll see other parts of the district that have some growth, that are inward growth. So this means there's movement into the area, there's a positive number, and let's say North Hudson, there's that positive number from 1st to 2nd grade. But in general, the ratios show no growth, or little to no growth in the K to 8 range. And that growth at high school has a direct correlation with the private school systems. Tim?
Don't have very many dropouts.
Yeah, well, that's the other part, is that I always said that Dr. Richards goes, they don't have any dropouts. I call them super seniors, but I don't think they're super seniors. It's just that you don't have any dropouts. If this were, let's say we're in California, we'll use California to say.
Stay broad.
Yeah.
California.
California. Okay, I'll tell you, someone can come in my office and show me one of these with no other naming conventions. I make the names I can tell you what country or what part of the country it is. That's how, it's like, showing the, precipitation maps. I can tell you what part of the country precipitation is occurring or what, it's just, you've seen these enough that you kind of already, or Lance.
It's very, sorry to interrupt, but that's a very strong number in your high schools. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
strong.
you don't see that, so, you see that in California, but it's artificial. Because I told Dick they have super seniors. So you get this longer, instead of a 12-month year, they're an 18-month senior year. But, thank you for that. And we're focusing on your single-family detached, because that's that's one of the primary housing developments going on in the area. People ask, well, how do you figure that out? I said, well, we geocode the kids to the world, so we know where they are, and we know the housing type, so let's turn on the housing type and then overlay how many kids land on that type of house. There's no trickery to it. It's either they're there or they're not. And the best part about it is that the assessor was able to give us the details of the exact where the properties are, or I'm going to do this air quote, where they were listed in the data of the town or township they were in. So it was nice because you're able to go look at these larger samples. Again, it goes back to statistics class. We're looking at areas with the larger samples. And a little bit more, helps you all more specifically see those generation rates in the neighborhoods that you know. The city of Hudson, of course, it's going to have a lower rate because it's not really, it's aging out. It's kind of more of a renewal. I want to say the Silver Fox hipster area, probably for Lance, not for me. St. Joseph, a little bit higher. And then town of Hudson, as you get further out, that's where you see the higher generation rates. Now, district-wide, you're at 33%, or for K-5, you're at basically 14 students for every 100 homes built. Pretty cool. It's not difficult math. And are there kids here? No algebra was involved in this. It was real math. Okay, Tim. Hey, so we drove this entire district. It was fun. I wouldn't want to do it this week, but we were here one month ago. Looking forward to the Zoozical, but missing it. But drove the entire district and drove outside the district and looked at some of those areas like the Hills of Troy. People go, well, why are you tracking that? Well, there's kids that live in those areas or live around those areas that are open and rolling, which is fantastic when you have space. And be able to understand that and then be able to apply the generation rate specifically for those areas comes in really handy. Now, someone's going to go, there's 665. That means, whatever the number was. It's, 665, that's what, 90, almost 100 kids. I'm just trying to do my Rain Man math right now, about 90-something kids. Okay. That's not all at once. Right? That's over 7, 10 years in some cases. There's some developments that the houses are selling, they're moving. They're not moving on the scale that you all see in other parts of the country. That's just, when you're selling brand new homes on 3-acre parcels, there's a lot of startup stuff that needs to happen, and so it takes a little longer to get those things moving down the road. When we're working in other parts of the country where they're 3 acres is 25 homes in other parts of the country. We were joking about driveways. Some people aren't familiar with driveway costs. I'm like, I'm a nerd. I stop and I'm like, holy cow, that's a $100,000 driveway right there. She's like going, oh my gosh, here we go again. Did you see that they're using 2x6s inside there? Oh my gosh, and going over the different price differentials when you start looking at the materials. It's always fun. I love bringing the younger staff out to these things because they think I just go, There he is out in the field pointing at stuff, shouting at the clouds. But we're visiting these places. And we're able to then provide this in the online analytics, allowed staff to kind of make sure, oh yeah, that's where we are, and then summarize the information in advance of providing the forecast. Tim, district forecast. Perfect. This is my staff hates me. It's all colors. But I do know one thing. They color coded in a way that shows the peak year, the peak counts, and differentiates what the lower counts are. It's wonderful. I like the colors and stuff. It basically is just showing you, you've had some very large classes in the early part of earlier last 3 or 4 years. If we didn't look at anything else, you have a natural shift occurring where you have less kids replacing the larger classes graduating through. That's just the way. By the way, it's not just in Hudson, it's everywhere in the U.S. It depends on where you are. Like in some parts of the U.S., it's now that happened. 2 years ago, it was some parts of Texas. It just depended on the recovery out of the last recession, what state recovered quicker, and where that bubble went through. Does that sound right?
It happened earlier in Indiana when I was superintendent.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the easiest demographic information that you can calculate. It's what goes out and what comes in over annualized across the trend.
Yeah. I hate to put that simplistically, but that's kind of the way it's kind of the easy understanding of the natural shifts that are occurring within the area. Your district, if you look at these numbers on the screen, I want to make sure you understand when it says resident students. These are students that live in your district that are enrolled at your schools. So well, I don't understand. Is it all the kids? I go, no, these are the kids that want to go to your schools that are living in your district. What about the other kids? I go, the open enrolled kids, they could go to their other school district quicker than we can do anything about it. We have 200 plus of open enrolled kids. You could track them through enrollment forecasting, but other than that, they're not really, if you do any zone change, it doesn't change where they're enrolled. They're still going to be an open enrolled sample. But your district is projected to continue to lose students. And that has to do with a couple things. You have an adjustment to the lower grades, lower population in lower grades, and as they begin to settle, you start to see the district plateau. We're talking about a client that's in Pennsylvania that once had 25,000 students. It was down to 4,000. By the way, it wasn't anything that the district did. It was just a Rust Belt thing, Rust Belt shift, and it was in an area where, when you don't have people and you change the lumber industry and you've gone to, it really affects families living in the area. There's only so many kayaks you can rent to go down to Allegheny. I mean, this is it. But at some point, it doesn't go to zero. This is we're talking about population, like another organism in our world. It's not linear or anything like math. We're not math. We don't math to zero. Okay.
And Lauren, just to
Yes,
kind
sir.
of clarify on the numbers, so you have, when we talk about being down 147 kids in the district, we're talking about the kids that we count for revenue purposes.
Correct.
When we talk about the kid counts that we do related to enrollment at the elementaries, that we give that report every month, Andrea gives that report, those are, for lack of a better term, butts and seats. Those are inclusive of all kids, including open enrolled in and all of those kids. Mm-hmm. And then you have these numbers, which you're basing your calculations on, which are resident students that also attend.
Correct.
So they wouldn't include the open enrollment out students and things along those lines, which
That's right.
our count students do include those. So some people might say, well, why are the numbers different than what we've seen in different places? Just to clarify, that's the big difference. There are 3 different sets, and they're used for very different reasons, and they all have their own purpose.
Yeah, no, our methodology is specifically set up for facility planning long-term planning. I refer to it as the forecast to help avoid the multi-million-dollar mistakes. Try to get ahead of things. I have clients we worked with for years. I remember a client in Texas is like, oh my gosh, we got to rezone. Yeah, okay, cool. We'll rezone. And he goes, when do we have to do this again? I look at this forecast and I look at this, you want to do this for another 8 years. He's laughing. And we go, he's retired. They had to rezone a year after he retired, year 9. I mean, it's, you know, we it gave everybody plenty of room. Talk about lawn runway. I think he forgot about it. This retired, and next you know, by the way, it's time to split that or expand that elementary area that we talked about 7 years ago. You know, being able to look at it in this way makes it a lot easier to plan further out. Tim, thank you.
I just have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So one thing that's come up a lot is people saying there's new development, and
Yep.
I know you addressed some of that, but on this chart it says with no new development the next decade. Tell me what you mean by that.
Yeah. So anybody, let's go skip ahead to the next one. That's a bar graph. No one cares about that. Let's go. There we go. Thank you, Tim. We can look at bar graphs all you want. It's the same numbers. It's just picture. It's just making the picture of the numbers. Okay. So with no new development, so that was you know, we have the ability to start looking at other relationships. What if the market crashes? There's no development. That's what that looks like. Your district doesn't drop to 4,200. It drops closer to 4,000. So not a lot of impact from housing, but enough that, you know, hey, the housing development's in there. Guess what happens when it's not? It really starts to taper down, doesn't it? And you know, guess what? If the planning department and the cities decide, hey, you know what, we might want to address how we rezone these neighborhoods, then you're gonna have to come back and revisit this, because if they go from a 3 to a 1, it's simple, you know, that's simple math too. You know?
So do you take into consideration in our area, trends as far as development and what's seeing in the near future? I mean,
Yeah.
that's one of the concerns, is that we have, you know, townships that want to keep a rural,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
makeup, but
Yeah,
also want.
we take that into account. So when we're looking at the development that they're working on at this point, the stuff that's either approved or in planning, we'll look to see, okay, which ones are, oh, these are the 3 acre ones. Okay. These are the 3 acre ones. Where else are those? Well, most of the new big developments, or most of the developments, are these larger lot homes. So, yeah, we take that into account.
So you've taken already, so this is basically showing, okay, when people say we have 700, on the books, you've taken into account almost 700 new homes being built in our school district,
That's right.
housing units. You've taken that into consideration, plus the mobility rates, and that's how you came out with this calculation. So it's not like all of a sudden,
No, all we did was instead of calculating the, you know, it's a thing that you take a factor out. We said, okay, what if homes don't happen? You still track the plots, like before you know, during the recession, we still track the plots. No homes were coming, no schools were coming from it, no homes were being built. So to do that, you just say, okay, there's no student generation because there's no development happening, yet we're still tracking those. And there's no determined, you know, basically saying there's no determined value when that's going to come online. It's really nice thing to having software built GIS that we use that allows us to do the what if scenarios like that.
So, sorry, I stepped away.
You're okay.
Slide 16 includes the 600 some that we know are gonna happen. And then when you get to slide 18, they all fall apart and none of them get built.
Nothing happens.
Okay, thank you.
We thought it'd be interesting to have that in there, because there's discussion how significant, housing is quite significant in all forecasting. But that give you a better idea of how impactful it is. What does it look like if it's not there?
So, I mean, sorry.
You're good.
So you're basically talking about 5% swing. And so when you're looking at these forecasts, and you're looking at, you basically have a three-legged stool here. You have birth rates, you have mobility, and then you have development. And so for districts, if you have a declining birth rate and your mobility, you don't have folks moving in because your housing stock doesn't support a ton of families coming into your district, then the only way that you can backfill that enrollment is through development. Well, your residential development is limited by the structures that are in place already. So that's an important number because that is a 5% swing. And to his point, should there be, on the flip side of that, if they rethink that policy and they look at it differently in the decade to come, then that could also be a 5% swing the other way.
Pretty cool, huh?
I think so one of the things too is are some of our neighboring areas across the rivers, Stillwater, Lake Elmo.
Yeah.
You're seeing a very aggressive changing in their zoning for higher density housing. And a lot of people, the perception is, well, we're building more homes in Hudson. Hudson's growing. We know from the data that we're not seeing the kids coming with those purchases. But what we're not seeing is an aggressive plan to increase higher density housing.
That's true.
I think, yeah.
So you saw that in South Washington, Woodbury had almost built out in some areas. The last vestige before coming across the rivers, Stillwater or South Washington, basically were areas that you can build still, right? With value that's close to the city. People still need to commute in every couple times in a week if they're commuting in. By the way, there was no traffic coming this way. It was just us. Tim, I was worried about the traffic coming this way. I'm thinking there's going to be, no, they're probably waiting for Monday Night Football or something.
It is Monday.
Huh?
It is Monday. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My whole day's been lost.
Right. So we put these
Mr.
numbers.
President?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry,
Yes, sir.
I had one more question. Maybe you talked about this when you were talking about mobility, but one factor that gets raised often is that is housing turnover of current homes, and how do you think about that in your?
That's calculated through the mobility. So
Okay.
like Houghton's a good example that there's not a lot of turnover occurring with young families in that area. Areas, would be, I didn't, maybe it adds to confusion if I add somebody else's stuff to it, but there are other parts of the country where there is, when people talk about, oh, they have people moving in the area, we work in districts in the Carolinas where, no, people are moving into the area. So their birth rates are artificially high because the inward migration of people. Their mobility numbers are in 5-6 points greater in all those levels because young families can afford to live in this area or those types of things. That's where we see that inward movement and change and turnover in existing neighborhoods. So when we were doing that study, when we're looking at each one of the study areas, we make sure to identify that study area has development the last several years. We need to make sure that's tracked with the development, because if we don't, then sometimes you'll double count too in those areas. So we've identified a lot of the areas that are recent builds. Anyways, there's a chart up there that shows the difference between if development occurs and if development doesn't occur. And there's the spread as it gets out there after year 10. And so I had 4.25.
It was Lance math.
Lance math. Okay, so he's like me. We kind of round up math. My dad getting money back from me, math. With the disappearing $20 math. Next slide. So in a nutshell, we in this spreadsheet we identify the rate of change in over a 3-year period. The only part of the district that has any growth is the Rivercrest Elementary area. Everybody else, and we also put the middle school and high school because they're the total population. They represent the entire geography of the district. But if you look at some of the other elementary zones, they're all projected to see a loss over the next 3 years. Next slide, please. Another chart to really bring it home. This is, the dark color is year 5. The lighter color is the year 10 number, percentage. And yes, the high school seems to see an increase in decline in middle school. Why do you think that is? Because they've had these larger classes graduating through, and they're eventually in year 5, 6, and 7, they're seeing these smaller grades come up. Yeah. I like, so we don't do it that often, but sometimes I'll put the chart in with side by side of it looks like a wave from elementary to middle to high. Overall, there's the overall numbers break down over 5 and 10 years. Everybody's focused on the elementary areas, but the high schools and middle schools will see a shift because just a natural effect of population shifting and matriculating into the upper grades. Next slide, please. This is a great map. This is an example of all your study areas, and then they're color-coded in a way that shows your impact area. So the red areas are the areas of greatest decline, and the lower one, the bright green on the bottom, is that bright green?
The bright green is like.
Yeah, thanks. I got it. Bright green is the area of growth in the area. You'll notice in some cases they follow where the housing developments are occurring. Understanding this in spatially is very, very helpful for everybody you're already familiar with the district. Now you can kind of get a better idea of what specific, where the shifts are actually occurring. And it's, frankly, it's not in one specific area, it's throughout the district. Now keep in mind when you see a big old red polygon like that out in the eastern part of the district, that's a geography with only so many kids in it.
So that's a direct reflection of your density of population to get that study size.
Yeah. Next slide, please. So overall, you're projected to lose nearly 600 kids over the next decade. Most of this we've covered, but just to keep in mind, it is as current as of when we press go. Someone comes in and changes master plan of a community, you might as well throw out the numbers, right? Someone comes in and says we're going to put in data centers in some areas, but it's not going to happen, but they put in some data centers somewhere, it changes the whole dynamics of that neighborhood, right? So this is as good as it is as we press go last week, right? It hit enter, run the numbers, because we made sure everything was in order. We made sure we had the correct where the housing development is, make sure the kids were geocoded correctly, make sure that we had the correct birth information, and then prepare the summary of information. The key component of this is that your utilization rate in elementary and elementary is significant. It's tough when you're at a school, because I grew up in I'm very young. I grew up went to elementary in the late 70s, early 80s. And I remember attending a school that was under enrolled for a period of time in a very small rural area. Superintendent's office was right in the same building. So it was always fun getting yelled at, Nick. Someone like Nick yelling at us all the time. But I remember that there was also the situation, I didn't know this at the time, but I knew because my mom was a teacher, that we weren't getting some of the stuff the other schools were because there just wasn't enough funding for that campus. Under enrolled, there's only so many, like you had, even back in the day, you had a traveling vice principal. But I thought was normal. I didn't know that was not normal back then. That's what happened. So those are things to talk about. On another fun note, that's part of our work. Not in this scope, but we look at capacity utilization. And gentleman to my left, Dr. Richards, helps with us when it comes to analyzing the data even further when we get into that. That's when we call, and people go, what about curriculum? That's when we pick up the phone and call one of our other staff colleagues that are in the curriculum side to help walk through those parts. But one of the things I want to make sure, I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over the place, the middle part of the executive summary, don't want to overlook it, that the middle school and high school numbers are projected to continue to be more impacted in year 5 and 6. So, Tim, go ahead. And we're in with Dr. Richards.
Nobody's happier to be here than I am.
Oh my gosh.
Well, and before we move on to the engagement piece, can we open up for any additional questions board would have related to the demographics, or I don't know if they have questions?
I don't know that it's a question, it's just kind of, as I walk, thank you for the presentation and the analysis, it's super helpful to see. I mean, the three-legged stool analogy was super helpful for me, and so it's kind of thinking birth rates, we had a decline and now we're basically going to be flat, is what you're telling me. That's where that, looking out at data from the American Community Survey, drilling down to our zip codes. The other leg of the stool, new building. Yes, we do have new development happening, but because of geography, because of community development plans that set how the type of development that happens, it's limited in what's happening. Layer on the mobility. We are low or flat with mobility. And so we might have housing turnover, new people moving in, but that isn't really increasing and bringing in droves of students, and that may be factored into housing costs. And again, just historically, birth rates declining, so people just naturally having fewer kids, even though they may move into the district. Kind of the three pieces that I took away.
Wow, you should have sat up here. That was way better than I could
Okay,
have said.
thank you. I did have one quick question for you guys, and that is on when you go to slide, and I just want to make sure, because development's a big conversation here, and that's something people have really asked us about and said there's development happening, and we want to make sure we're accounting for that. And I know you guys on slide 14, you drove around, and I see all these yellow dots. In the Holton area, up by 64 area, I think there was some plot of land up there where there were some things that were potentially up for sale. Like, tell me about that piece of
Yeah,
it.
so what we're going to include in this report, we're going to include any development that's greater than 25 units.
Great.
That's in any activity. If it's not in any activity or it's not officially announced, we won't be able to. No, there are some that will, oh, wait a minute, that's next to this. Infrastructure's here. It's clear that it happens.
Phase 2.
When you get out into some rural areas, there's some areas that, like in western PA, where I'll drive by and go, that's going to be 600 homes in 5 years. And the guy's like, what are you talking about? There's an 8-inch aqueduct valve right there. It's flat and there's water. 5 years later, they're building homes.
I think that's one of the questions that might come up, because there are small pocket developments with this 2-acre lots up in Holton, but there might be 11 or 13 lots in that one, so you're kind of not seeing that or not adding that in.
It's way too small. You all don't have the scale of development to offset what the decline that's occurring.
Okay. And with that too, there's no chance of city water or sewer up there, where down below 94, there's farmland.
And infrastructure.
And infrastructure. So that's what that's taking into consideration. So.
Yeah, that's how, as a developer, that's how developers think too. I mean, they're looking for what's the path of least resistance.
So one of the things we keep hearing is, 25, 30 years ago, when most of us had, or some of us had, young kids going through, this is, booming, and that's that surge we've seen go through. And what? and the perception in the community by many who have lived through that think, well, this is just because of COVID and the recession,
right?
And it's going to bounce back to where it was, right? And there's all these other factors that are saying this is potentially a new normal, right?
Correct. So you all are familiar with the term fertility replacement rates. Show of hands, who, or if you know the correct answer, what's the natural replacement rate? 2.1. 2.1. You know where we are in the U.S.? What's that? 1.6. So we're 50 points off of where we're supposed to be. You know where we are, and people go, oh, well, let's have, I like this part, this is my fun part. This is where I talk to the state agencies about this. They'll say, well, immigration will help fix it. The whole Western Hemisphere is in a negative. Not North America, the entire Western Hemisphere is below replacement, natural replacement. Anybody show of hands where the only positive value is in the world? We're all, if we are, for us, Freeman economists, we should all have been aware of it about 20 years ago. It's China. All fun stuff. Poor Nick has to put up with this. I read a lot of white papers too, which is fun. I don't read regular stuff. I read science stuff, and it's always fun. But in the world, we're in decline. And someone asked the other day, I'm on a plane. They find out they start talking to me and say, well, is it true we're supposed to get 12 million people in the world? And I said, no. It's been adjusted. It's 9.2, probably at peak. And they're probably be lower depending on if the numbers come out of China. And there's reoccurring numbers that are coming out of China that they're a lot lower. So in the world, we're in a trend where we're now becoming like Greece or Italy. We won't have enough kids. Is that fun? Dang. Hey, don't bring me in. I'd rather go to Zoozical. But this is, my poor wife has to put up with this all the time, guys. I'm sorry. I'll sit there and I talk about this stuff and it's, but in general, we just understand, you're right, it's gonna be a new normal. I hate that term. But there's coming out of COVID, all COVID basically started showing it a lot quicker. Because if you look at trend lines pre-COVID, and then coming back, the bounce back in 2020, 2021, you can start seeing that trend line come back into where it was, or it dropped off. In some districts, you'll see like a 3 or 4% shift to where it was projected earlier, and now where it is. You got out of there before the COVID hit.
No, I was a superintendent during COVID.
He was.
I'm still twitching.
But we take all that into account. So if we're looking at like the little spec housing developments, we're not picking that up because that has a whole different mechanism. You're going to pick that up in the mobility numbers. It's not a large development.
Brian, just another question on the impact of new housing. So I think the number of kids is something like 0.3, 0.4 per housing unit, something roughly.
For little kids, yeah, 0.134.
So that, to me, just at face value, feels shocking.
Mm-hmm.
You think of a new house, you think of a new family of 4 or 5 moving into it, right? They're expensive. Can you put that number into context? Is that normal, or is Hudson unique?
It's not. I'll tell you what. Everybody wants to know what normal is. 0.33 is basically what you're seeing in suburban areas. What isn't normal is when you start seeing what looked like a neighborhood, and it's that brand new neighborhood going on, and the entire K-12 is at below 0.2. That isn't normal, but it has to do a lot with people can't afford to move into those areas, or there's bypassing that and going to a different location altogether.
It's also important to factor in that even if it generates children, it's going to be across a K-12 spectrum. So, you always think of these. I had a really nice 100-unit subdivision that was going in my school district, and I was, because we needed it like manna from heaven. We needed it. And a big chunk of it opens up, and we're picking up like 2 kids. I'm like, what's going on? Well, there were a lot of preschool, like those little tight cars in the driveway. So we were hoping they would age in, but it just never. It wasn't the saving grace that we all had hoped it would be in terms of that single elementary.
It didn't have the 1990s effect.
No,
when you built it, you had a 0.8 to 1 ratio.
Well, I mean, when we were kids, we all knew families that we were 3. And, we had kids down the street were 4 and 5 and 6. And there were large families growing up and a much higher generation rate.
We're lovely at cocktail parties talking about this, by the way, so if you need to hire us out, perfect.
We can do the small talk.
Let's go, yeah, there we go. Great questions, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, you know, that kind of leans its way straight into community engagement. Well, let me start over again. There's nobody happier to be here than I am after 5.5 hours in the lounge at Chicago O'Hare. I do appreciate your patience and let me kind of join you late. I'm very excited about community engagement. I mean, I know that there are some tough decisions that have had to been made here, and you've got a lot of folks that are upset and trying to understand the why. And, you know, and this kind of comes back around to how we engage in community engagement, when we talk to folks and we engage with folks. And it's a lesson for all of us in terms of don't assume, because really what people want to know is what is going to be the outcome. They're going to be angry up front, and there's a certain amount of denial. And, you know, and another important factor about small schools is a few kids one way can really swing a number or a percentage or, you know, even with test scores for those of you that examine those things. So don't assume, clarify what their key concerns are around that before we lean in. Also, in staying positive, because no one needs a negative Nelly. Negative's so easy. Negative's lazy. You got to stay positive and try to frame it and look in terms of what's best for the community and what's best for all kids. We know that this is going to impact some families differently as they go forward. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a little bit. But understanding their angst and acknowledging the emotions, because change is hard. And people, really importantly, people need to feel heard. And that's the biggest part of our community engagement as we move forward, making sure that we gather insights and concerns from the community. So overall engagement point. So basically, I should just say ditto. Because everything you've seen on that screen today, in some form or fashion, is what we're going to share with your community. We're going to talk about it. We're going to drill down into this. Okay, look, here's what it is with the development. I know those numbers are shocking. We have got this three-legged stool, and this is kind of how it works. And you got more kids walking dogs than pushing baby carriages, you know, and having those conversations around where are we now. That was our kind of our project initiation, but explaining to folks the reason we're here. And people in your community know why we're here. All right, what do we know? Which is kind of what we're talking about today. Where do we want to be? And then we get that community feedback. So we're going to, before we define that best way forward. So the biggest thing is promoting transparency, and it's promoting that accountability so people understand and can quantify the problem for themselves, so they can understand the challenges. Because as the folks that are joining us online, I'm sure tonight, and the conversations we're going to have going forward, it's very important that they understand there's no hidden numbers. You may not like the numbers, but the data is real, and these folks spend an inordinate amount of time making sure that the data is accurate coming in, because it's like baking a cake. You got to make sure you've got the right inputs so you have the right outputs, and we do in this case. And I know that just, when you see that number, you go, we thought it'd be different. You know, we thought it'd be different. So educate and activate community members so we can create these informed decision makers so people can understand, and you'll bring some people around. We're not going to have a kumbaya moment at the end of our community engagement. Well, we might, but doubtful. But we're going to create that, what I call the elevator speech. So people can explain and quantify, because not everybody's going to be able to come to the community engagement. So the folks that do come are going to be some of your folks that are kind of served in those social networks that kind of bring the information back out, shared in the larger community, so that they can help you quantify the problem and explain the problem, the challenges going forward. So framework and process, we'll talk through all this, you know, an engagement practice that is not just about the loudest voices, because we all know who those folks are in the community that are very upset and that type of thing. But in our process, in our procedure, we're going to inform the decision-making criteria, and we're going to understand that meaningful stakeholder engagement impacts final outcomes. So when we share this in this first session, we will share some proposed boundary shifts, and we will gather insights from folks surrounding those boundaries, bring those back, take a look at what we can and can't do, and bring that information forward. What folks have to understand in terms of the boundary analysis is that no decisions are going to be made until after the community input. So everybody, let me clear that, everybody gets a chance to weigh in on this information. because we'll have our community engagement, we'll have public surveys that'll be sent out, folks can weigh into, we'll bring that information in, we'll quantify it, we'll categorize it, and we'll be able to bring that information back to you so you can understand the key concerns of your community. I'm sorry, next.
I just say hit it, Tim.
Hit it. All right. So some of the common challenges around this are around understanding of the challenges, so that when we do this approach, that we can align the district needs and present all of this information to the school community. Again, transparency and accountability. Similarly, around the shared data and making sure that the entire process to final recommendations, that they understand the process and the procedure behind it, all those ingredients. And we have to be honest about the financial constraints and unrealistic expectations. We have to kind of mention that and kind of lean into that a little bit, because look, you're doing what you have to do as a community board, as a school board, in order to honor your commitment to all of the stakeholders of your school community. And you have a significant number of folks that don't have kids in the schools, may have never had kids in the schools. I mean, in the old days, we used to say it was kind of an 80-20, 20% of your population has a direct tie in that moment to the schools and 80% doesn't. And all those folks are taxpayers. And so one area I will applaud you, because I'm just a little bit about me. I'm a 30-plus years in public education in Indiana. I was a superintendent during COVID. They like the phrase, call me a recovering superintendent. I still have my I always lead with this. I still have my CDL, so if you need somebody to drive the bus, I'm your man. But having said all that, I would applaud you in that you are trying to be out in front of this. The stark reality is you've got 1,000 empty seats. And your district is a good-sized district, but it's not an enormous district. And so you have to be out in front of that in order to be operationally viable, because your operational dollars are like a jar of Skippy peanut butter. And there's only so many pieces of toast that those dollars can go back to. And you can't go back to the inefficiencies of buildings and operational costs. It's a hole that you can get into. And once you get in the hole, it's almost impossible to get out of. It's a situation where, in creating of equity of access to adequate facilities, involves making sure you create equity and access to school facilities and programs for all your students in the best way possible. And it locks you into that long-term flexibility, so you can understand what you're doing now. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over. So understanding that we're having to take these measures now in order to get out ahead of X, Y, or Z. And then, again, we're going to lead with what's best for students, driven by the sound data, impacted by community input. Here's our challenges. Here's some proposals. What do you think about that? And weigh into that. Just a little bit of our community engagement. So they are it's a town hall-like event. It's not an open mic night. We present we share all the data. We have live polling with a program called Poll Everywhere. And those are some components of that. We have a word wall where we have single word, like an area where your district excels, and they'll throw that up and that kind of thing. And then the Poll Everywhere is live polling. It's very much like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire when they live poll the audience. The numbers come up and you can come across and people can weigh in that way. And then once we do that, based on that survey, we'll also send out a community-wide survey to connect further for folks that couldn't be there. And generally what happens is many times we'll record that. It'll be, sent out, live streamed and that type of thing. And so folks that either watch it live stream or watch the recording then can participate in the survey the other way. And you can push that out through it's a link, you can push it out through your school messenger program or any of the Classroom Dojo or any of those formats that you have. But it's important that we try to capture as much as we can in that. And we capture, if you've got, I've done sessions, believe it or not, I did sessions on this exact thing in Utah where you anticipate with larger families continuing growth. And there was a common refrain in the district I worked with there, and they said, 4 is the new 8. What? And they said, 4 is the new 8. Well, they were having, the newer families are having much smaller families going forward into those schools, and they were facing some of those same demographic challenges going forward. So it's important that we share all of this information, we gather all the information. In those sessions, we had up to like 600 people. And so we're able to bring all that and capture all that data and bring it back forward to you. But again, the key element here is that we're gonna share it all, and then everybody gets to weigh in. Everybody has an opportunity.
Mr. President? Just with the large-scale town hall events, the 2 dates, so those are going to be the same type of presentation? So we have 2 options for
Yes.
people to attend?
I'm glad you mentioned that. The first one will be a presentation of representative of the work up to that point.
Okay,
And what we'll do is we'll have maps, we'll show the changes within those maps, we'll have some discussion around those changes. People will be able to weigh into A, B, or C, A, and C, that, things that they could, that they can understand, some of the challenges, and some of those challenges are gonna be reflected in this next slide that we're gonna talk about, because you're gonna have homework too, by the way. So the second meeting will be a similar format, sharing some of the same information in terms of the explaining the challenges, but then it will have any of the revisions that we were able to make from that first meeting. We felt like in talking with district leadership, and this is kind of a little different format, we would normally just do just as you'd said. We'd normally come in, roll across 2 or 3 nights, depending on the size of the district, present the same information, come back and gather some insights, and then bring that back to the board. In this case, it was felt that we needed to go to the community, get their insights, come back to the community, they can see the work of that, so they have actually a second opportunity to weigh into those insights, and then bring that in. So you're gonna kind of get an extra layer on that in terms of what's brought back around to district leadership.
that's great. And then, maybe you don't know the answer to this yet, but how many boundary options do you usually bring to the first meeting?
I will tell you that the last time we did this, we had 3, and they were like, blue, green, and yellow. We
Okay.
don't number them, or we don't A, B, and C them. Sometimes it'll lend itself to a 4th one, just depending on where the development is, and because look, you got those study areas, so you're working off the study areas. I'll be honest with you, sometimes it ends up just being a two option, because that's just the way the math works, and that's what these guys do. That's what these folks do every day, all year round, and have had decades of experience. So, having said that though, if we go to that next slide, this is kind of the driver behind it. And this is kind of where you've got some homework coming forward. And this is also information. So again, some of what you saw on my slides would be shared in a different format with your audience. This will be shared with your audience, and they'll be able to understand kind of how the problem has to be approached. And for you as district leadership, you've also got to take a look at this and decide, well, what's our key drivers behind this? Because you have guiding principles, and you have this kind of this bubble that works around. And I want to stress that these all are in direct conflict with one another in many ways. Because in your case, what you have is a capacity and utilization situation. So we've got to take a look at that. But you also have to consider transportation, because it costs, just shy of $10 a mile to run a bus down the road when you factor all the costs involved. You'd love to minimize impact, but if you do that, what happens 5 years, 10 years down the road if you don't make the big changes today that will ward off the challenges of the future? You've got special populations and demographics and programs and special needs and socioeconomic concerns. You've got natural barriers of the interstate and golf courses and lakes and all those kind of things that roll in. Your feeder patterns are clean here, so it's not a feeder pattern considered, and I'll take that off for our presentation. You never want an island zone. Sometimes you'll see these school districts where they just pluck this whole development out here and truck them in because the development came online. This is the school that had the capacity, and they didn't want to impact anyone else in terms of that. So we're not going to have any island zones. And then there's always a conversation around neighborhood schools. And so when you look at your present elementary boundaries, you can see where the density of populations are based on just the size of the elementary zone in order to fill that building. And so those are all the things that kind of weigh into this. And they're almost like the lotto picks when they see the ping pong balls bouncing around, they draw the numbers out. We have to lean into these things, and they have to be balanced to meet the district needs. And we also have to, as we move into this, because people will offer this, the X, Y, and Z, but there's always an unintended consequence that comes around that. So the key to this is that conversation that comes back around the key considerations for your district to make all of your students as whole as possible. And making sure that you don't go through this process again in 5 years. That you answer the questions the first time. Look, you never get credit for the crisis that you avoid, right? I mean, you're taking steps now to avoid a future crisis. Thank you. Nobody's going to give you an attaboy or an attagirl for that, okay? However, the next set of board members will understand that. The next set of district leadership will understand that. So it's important that you make the decisions for all the kids the best way you can with the best information you have at this time. If this is your homework, you're going to have to give this some thought, and I believe you have a meeting come back around on Monday to kind of bounce through some of these.
Mr. President?
Yes, ma'am.
Given you guys are gonna do kind of a review of all the data on the 17th, can we record that so that anybody who can't make that meeting but comes to the 23rd can at least watch it and kind of have that opportunity to see that?
Are you talking about
Sorry,
the
yeah.
13th?
13th.
Yep.
I'm pulling,
Yep,
I'm
so
making
we'll-
dates up, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So yes, we can absolutely set up so we have the 13th meeting recorded, and then we can put that online.
Thank you.
And then they will do a briefer review on the
Yeah, we'll try to
27th.
pare that down. The challenge I run into with that is there's always those folks that show up, I didn't know anything about this. And they show up for the second meeting. So, and I'll apologize for folks that have engaged with us the first time or watched it online, but I also feel very strongly that we have to kind of step, even if I do it in a much more brief fashion or kind of this thing, but there's going to be somebody watching for the first time. There's going to be somebody sitting there for the first time. And I don't want to shortchange those folks. If they took the time to come out and meet with us out of their day, their busy lives, I think it's important that we give them that information. And I think that it's important that when we share the second go round, you don't want to, curtail expectations necessarily. But the reality is there's only so many ways this pie can be sliced. And so the changes that folks will see at that second one, there may be another one that we've seen, I'll be honest with you, we've had situations where we presented red, gold, and yellow, and the next time we come around, it's orange, purple, and magenta. No, magenta and purple are kind of the same, aren't they?
Wouldn't know.
But,
See what I have to put it with?
that folks leaned into a certain thing, had concerns around a certain thing. To be brutally honest, we don't know what we don't know right now. But it was felt that it was important to have the two opportunities to weigh in. Now, people may come away mad after that second meeting because, I wanted them to, again, we've got guiding principles. We have this overarching need to make sure that we create balance across the district for all students. And so, but there are always areas for change in that. Thank you.
Mr. President?
Yeah, it is.
So you said it's going to be a town hall style and there's going to be some polls. I've heard some people say some of the other meetings that we've held where we've had people work in small groups and give feedback on laptops that they felt they were, though that I personally found all the information that came from that to be very valuable because it was written down and I could read it and digest it. People felt that it was sort of performative or they didn't have a chance to really have discussion or get questions answered. So can you explain a little bit more how it looks? Is it just polls or are
No.
people talking
There
to each
are-
other?
No, there's not, in a general format, no. And we have done it the other way, where we've had hosts that would serve in groups, and we had to have pre-sign-ups to have people work in that discussion. The intentionality behind our community engagement is that we present all the information to everybody, and everybody has an opportunity to weigh in. There are multiple open-ended questions in that, and at the end, there's a complete open-ended where folks can write whatever they want, or they can provide information later to us, and that comes into that incorporated, because we kind of feel like if you have that concern, she has that concern, and then there will be a central theme that will come out of those comments. I'm not necessarily opposed to the small group format and that kind of thing. What I have found is that when we do this and we do it well, that we're able to gather you know, because there's going to be some folks in that room that are kind of quiet, that really are not going to ever speak up or speak out, but they can provide their insights into that. We just want to make sure that everyone has the same ability to participate and contribute.
And then as board members, just coming and sitting within the audience and sort of being there, or
We will stay after to answer questions. If people have questions about just form, process and procedure or any of those kinds of things. You know, while we're there, we're going to be banging the drum of, hey, if you've got a concern or a question, get it in the comments, because if you've got the concern, somebody else has got the concern, we can bring that forward. It can become a theme. What people have difficulty with is that there may be 2 or 3 people in there that are really charged up about an issue. And so what we have found many times is that when you balance that against the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. And so it's important that we make sure we gather all of those, all of that information. Did I answer the question? Mm-hmm. Okay. Sorry, I got going there. But we'll stick around. Oh, your school board. We've had sessions where it's important. This is an important thing. This is an MGT meeting. It's not a school board meeting. I mean, if you want it to be, you can, but you got to do that whole thing. So this is an opportunity for folks to come in and speak and contribute and see the information that MGT is bringing forward and see the information that we will be sharing that's a part of our process and procedure before we bring those the final maps, the final recommendations to you, the final scenarios. So we have been situations where folks come and, you know, we're introduced and we point out, yada, yay, wave. And I think that many times it works very well if folks are there, they can speak to folks after the meeting so they can feel heard. Yep. Because if they do want if they want that FaceTime, it's important they get it. But the importance of these community engagements is they're there to gather all of those insights. I'll stick around until midnight to talk to people through the process. And many times you'll get a gathering of 2 or 3 people that kind of step forward and say, hey, you know, did you guys consider X, Y, and Z? Or did you think about this? And those are insightful, but I always say, make sure you get it in the survey. Make sure you get it in the open-ended, because it's important for us to quantify and categorize all of that information, sweep it all in. Because there will be some very key themes. Now, some of the themes that will come forward, good, bad, or ugly, they're just not going to be actionable. Keep them all open. Build new schools. You know, those kinds of concerns will come into it. But again, we want to bring it all forward in terms of a process. We'll share it all, good, bad, or otherwise.
Mr. President,
Yes,
you
ma'am.
guys have said, we did boundary lines six years ago. It'll be 7+ years once we redo this one. How often are you seeing boundary line changes in your line of work, just so we can talk about that quickly?
How often do you see it for an existing client?
Yep.
I used the example earlier for, sorry. Coach voice, I just yell across the room. I was using the example the other day, earlier when we talked about a client that we've been working with for a number of years. You know, typically we try to do it to where you don't have to rezone again for at least a decade or so. Your projections indicate that it's going to be a fairly static population that that you can be confident that you don't have to do this again. Nick can retire and not have to worry about it.
But there can be game changers.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's a change of building code, if there's
Change of building code is a huge
this kind of would be a big shift.
That happened in Peoria when they introduced the chip manufacturing plant in the north part of Peoria, Arizona, and everybody lost their minds, right? And it changed the whole dynamics of the housing in that area. What happened? Caused the student generations to decrease because all people who were buying the properties could afford to live near the brand new area. And it typically was the people that weren't having kids. They're the double engineer household that have a trophy child, and that's about it.
You're not supposed to say trophy child out loud.
I know. I see it all the time. See people say, hey, we have all these kids. They're not going to school with you. It's nice, that part about your district. You actually can see where your outgoing is because your district tracks it. But yeah, that's the takeaway is, if you're not, there's districts that are fast growth districts that we work in, fast growth, still in inner growth, they're having to redistrict every 3-4 years ahead of development and stuff. That's still happening. There are districts that still have to do that. But that's usually in 20% of the districts. 80% of the districts are either static or in decline now.
And a significant number, of the ones that I work with are doing it in a moment of crisis because they've just waited too long.
We use I don't know if you heard, we used the example of Kenosha when Chris said, hey, we finally have to close these schools. Internally, they had already known that they had to close schools. They were just kicking the can down the road. We want to avoid any of that. You don't want to kick the can down the road, because what happens, you start kicking the can down the road, is people internally start getting really mad at whoever's been working, who was in leadership at that point. Guys kept on pushing us down the road, and it didn't get solved, and now look at where we are. Well, you all are you've been very proactive in this. You understand that there's been a shift in the population, or you've seen that there hasn't been the growth that was thought that might have been in areas. You're already ahead of this. So.
I think I have just one more question, but as it's sort of like crystal ball, but I think, you all you do projections every day. I think there's still a lot of people in our community, and I just think in our country in general, that are having a hard time grappling with the idea of the declining birth rates, and that it didn't really turn around after the Great Recession, and then COVID had sank, and I look at other countries, like South Korea, where it's like 0.7, just countries I haven't seen places where it starts to turn around. I'm just wondering, if you had to place a bet, or what do you think is going to happen in the coming years with birth rate? I'm not saying what number will we get to, but do you think it's going to turn around in the next 10, 20 years, or do you think this is a new normal for us?
This is a generational shift in our population, in the human population. So, one fun fact about me is I grew up in a household where there was a demographer. A great uncle was a demographer. He was from Purdue, Boilermaker, sorry. And I remember this conversation. I didn't understand it. You're a 5-6-year-old, and this guy's talking about wolves. He studied wolves, the wolves population in North America, and the correlation of wolves and people and stuff. And I remember the arguments, because you have, it was a very, and we're not argumentative all the time, but family gatherings became these discussions. Nerdy, bunch of nerds in our family, by the way. Nerdy discussions about population statistics. I'm a little kid trying to understand the fact that, Uncle Durwood's talking about the population not growing anymore, but Time Magazine says that we're about to burst. Because I was the kid, I was the echo, I was the Gen Xer. And so now I'm 7-8 years old, listening to, my great uncle talking about how the population's in decline, though China's he started talking about China's one-child policy, how that's going to affect things. 30, 40, 50, what is it now? How am I now? 50 years later, these numbers, these things that he was talking about are coming to effect. 2 generations it took to get us in the spot. It's going to take us a few generations to adjust. It's not an over. So I told you that we have a planners conference. We host with school districts. One year we had a person from state of Utah come and put on a presentation. This was 4 years ago now, about declines in births. He's coming at it at state of Utah level. Everybody laughs. Oh, us Utah, one kid for every house. And he's coming in with the same numbers, talking about, hey, we're not, our replacement value is not there anymore. We used to have like 0.8 and now we're at 0.6 and everybody in that room, they internalize the struggle, like they're gonna come to a solution. And I had to stand up and remind everybody that, like I said today, we're not gonna solve this when it comes to births. It's a multi-generational shift that we have to start accounting for. You have young people that are not getting married as young as they used to. You have young ladies that are professionals, greater percentage of young ladies that are professionals now that are seeking a career path right, before their MRS degree. What used to be remember my wife used to joke about the MRS degree.
Trophy wives and MRS for Lauren.
That's right, trophy kids.
Trophy kids and MRS.
They were MRS. But that's one of the things that we need to understand that what we grew up in and what we're familiar with is not the same as it is now. And we as K-12 administrators and leaders just understand that there's certain things we can control. We can control curriculum and control open enrollment. We control these things that make. I use Austin as a case study. Remind them that provide your market share that wants to attend your schools the best opportunity that they expect.
Yeah.
Put your effort into your kids that want to attend your schools and they're living in your community. You can hope and dream that they're going to have a lot more kids in the area. A plan for the worst, hope for the best.
Well, and make the best opportunity you can make for the kids that reside within
Bingo.
In your boundaries. You can hope that you'll get transfer kids. And you can hope that programs will, and if you've got space for them, because they bring dollars and they'll come in.
Yeah.
But you build out for the kids that you have because those families have made a commitment to your community.
Yeah.
Win the home kids. Well, that was way more answer, I think, than she wanted.
She likes that stuff.
Mr. President, can I ask a variant on that question? So when we were having the discussion about closing the 2 elementary schools, it's obviously a very permanent decision, right? It's a big deal. And, you know, we talked a lot about it in terms of risk and, you know, financial risk, enrollment risk, these things. Could you talk a little bit about, I guess we could say, call it upside risk? What would have to happen here for enrollment to turn to, you talked a lot about at the macro level just now, but at the micro level, how much risk is there that enrollment is going to go in the opposite direction yeah, up, yeah.
It's back to the three-legged stool. I mean, it's just a function of development. It's a function of housing stock, pure and simple. You're not going to change the trajectory on birth rates is what it is, and that's a plane coming. I mean, there's going to be a spot, but we're not there yet, and it may come back up. But the only way that districts grow is through folks coming in. And your district is emblematic of the challenges I had in my district, and I was part of the problem. I moved in because it was a great place to live. Built this nice house, raised my kids there, K through 12, and I stayed because I liked living there. My kids weren't there, and my house didn't turn over to bring kids. Further, go fast forward, I have since moved since I've retired, moved to a neighboring city, built out this house, made sure my 4-bedroom house, for those of you that live rural, I expanded my septic to make sure it was 4-bedroom compliant. $18,000, because as superintendent leaving, I want to make sure a family could move into my house. Nope. Lauren Woods, the equivalent of Lauren Woods and his wife bought my house.
Knock down a wall, turn it into an office, all that fun stuff.
And so
Thanks for the extra room.
Because of the price point, to be honest with you, because you have to have housing stock that is conducive to young families being here and living here. And so there comes a point where your folks begin to age out of homes and you begin to see that it goes back to that other leg of the mobility, because we've got some districts on the East Coast that are older communities, but there's enough variety of housing stock in there that some younger families can kind of come in and begin to see that turn.
Like Manchester City School District in New Hampshire. They had all this redevelopment going on. they started seeing this uptick in student populations because they were building, they were repurposing buildings, and they were marketing for families, like value-wise and stuff. The city put an onus on themselves to provide an environment for younger families because they were seeing the exodus.
Well, that
But they have plenty of space to do it.
That kind of goes back to your earlier question about how does that all change, and there has to be kind of a different attitude about kids and a different policy around children and the associated costs and supports that go with that. Because most people have decided that a larger family, one kid is tough, two kids is really expensive, and a third kid's out of the question.
Like in Brian's case, it'd have to be radical. You'd have to have the township saying, the townships would have to say, enough. Townships have to say, enough. We're gonna go back and revisit our master planning of how we're aligning this. You know, you don't have to have 3-acre lots, but you can do clover leaves that are isolated so that you still have a rural effect, but you're making more space. There's different ways to go at this. It's easy to say 2 3-acre lots, driveway setbacks 150 feet. You basically just now cornered the market on families that have to make $250,000 or more to live here.
And just kind of going back to that, so your projections show us at K5, basically for every 100 houses, it's 13.5 kids.
Yeah, 13, yeah.
So call it 14 kids. So every 1,000 houses is 140 kids.
Yeah, over the six grades.
Over the 6 grades. So, I mean, you're talking, and even with our capacity, even with closing buildings, we have 400 plus empty seats. So, I mean, you're really talking 3,000 plus type of houses before based on the same yield rates, before all of a sudden we would start to run out of room.
Yeah, because then you start having this inward movement. Imagine waking up in the morning and seeing that in your newspaper. I know a lot of people that are probably living here would not like that to happen.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the vast majority. I mean, and according to your numbers there's only 12,000 single-family houses in our entire district now.
Correct.
And the townships are getting to the point where they're pretty built out to start with.
Right.
There's not much left to annex to the smaller type lots.
Correct.
Schools generally don't get to be out ahead of that. They get to react to it in terms of student population, housing development, TIF zones, all those kinds of things that come into play. So,
Only the big county districts are kind of ahead of the curve because they have some integration with the planning departments within the education systems.
right, and there are limits on development as they may impact schools, but generally schools don't get to determine you don't get to determine how the homes are built or what's built or
Yeah,
in the right
let's
type
be
of
clear,
homes.
in this
Yeah.
area, we do not get to determine.
That's right.
Yeah, it's
Community
not-
development,
yeah.
we don't get to determine housing costs. The 3-legged stool we're talking about
Right.
here, we have no capability, this board or administration, to affect change on any one of these stools. We can create conversation and dialogue in our community. We can and are talking with folks who are in charge of community development plans and things of that nature to say, what can we do? Those are all important conversations, but unfortunately, we're just in a reaction mode, and we are
You are, but-
reacting to the data that's in
But
front
there's
of us.
I don't want us to leave this on Norn's negative blah blah. If you look at your trajectory, you're going to stabilize, and you're going to stabilize in a pretty good footprint, and you're not going to be your buildings aren't going to be in crisis, and you're going to be dramatically underutilized. So you've planned for this future that's coming in an adequate manner, and so there are applause for that because you're not in crisis and you're not going to be in crisis. You're just going to reflect the community that you have and the realities of the numbers at that time.
Well, applause would be great, but we have,
Mr. President?
we have, yep, oh, I'm sorry.
I have something before we end here, with them. You guys talked a little about your work in Texas and Indiana, California. You did even mention Kenosha. And some people listening might just wonder, kind of like, what are you doing here? So I'm wondering, where can people go in the community to look for your work and feel confident in what you are pitching and proposing here? I mean, where would you send them? Like, would you send them to your website? You guys, I've found some great articles that speak very highly of your company, but where would you recommend community members to go and look for your track record?
We have case studies on our website, so if you want to go to the website.
And could you say what that is?
mgt.us.
Thank you. And then I just wanted to mention that I really appreciate that that people, you mentioned that people need to be heard, and that the community, you're going to have the community live links and, you know, the whole promoting transparency and all that kind of stuff. I love that. I really appreciate that focus, and I really look forward to that being the case. Thank you.
Yeah, my point I was going to make was just, you know, we have a community that is part of the community is saying, you know, this is very rushed, and we don't have the data or the most up-to-date data. And, you know, from, you know, 3, almost 4 years ago, we had, you know, community engagement where we brought this up. We talked about the challenges, talked about the state funding, talked about needing legislators to be active, talked about the communities doing something to increase affordable housing. So, and at the time, thought, well, we're making some points here. People are starting to understand, you know, but we're still, and I just say, because I don't expect everybody to buy in, you know, one thing I've noticed while researching other districts that are going through this, or have gone through this, is that it's a very common theme, you know, mistrust, too fast. You know, so that's, and you know, data, how it's presented, how it's, so I agree with what everyone has said about the process and Aaron, but, you know, I look forward to a very solid engagement effort, but that's going to be one of the challenges. Heard that these meetings are too close together. There's not enough time to, you know, absorb the information and make good decisions. So those are just some of the challenges. And I don't want to end it on something like that.
I thought you did a very job with that.
Sorry.
More positive. I was
Well, yes, yes. If anybody would like to bail me out, that would be great.
I tried to give you an out with a positive. You just.
So moving into next week, what would you like from the board prior to next, you know, by the time they get done next Monday, so that we can send you those parameters or guiding principles?
Well, this is regarding your part,
Well, it's really, no, it's really about
the guiding principles.
for you in terms of what your
Well, I just need to,
mechanisms behind it.
yeah, we just need to, you know, you have people, I'll use, well, let's say school safety, and they'll use like catch phrases, school safety, closest to school. What happens is that there's dozens and dozens of terms people will use. What ends up happening is that we tend to align as we're working together and figuring out the top 3 things. They all seem to align with those things. Closest to schools, school safety, walk distance. Those are all safety related issues. And then balance of population and making sure it's equitable for everybody. That's another one, right?
So to his point, though, taking a look at those, understanding the guiding principles around that, and coming back with what you perceive as a board as your key drivers behind that. I mean, some of it's, you know, capacity utilization is one of those things, but are there other factors in there that we need to consider as we move forward in this analysis? Again, it's going to play off of one another. It just is it's a complete yin and yang when you begin pulling on that.
Yeah, and it's not about, we have a colleague that helps, and he does this work with us, and, you know, he really is adamant. He really he doesn't talk about dollars and cents. It's not about dollars and cents. It's about population, making sure that we're being effective in providing opportunities for the kids. Of course, money things will happen with money as you take 2 schools offline, and of course that happens. That's not the underlying part. The underlying part goes back to that story shared with being a person in a school that was under-enrolled. And even as a elementary age kid, even though I was kind of dialed in with parents and education, my mom and education, realizing, oh, yeah, we were not getting everything some of the other schools in the district were getting, because just operationally, that was just the way it was, you know. We want to make sure that's not the case. We want to make sure everybody understands, hey, equitable solution, how many kids are here? Well, of course, we'll look at generalized numbers, but then what does it balance out at? What does it look like in this area? Are we making sure that the population represents the district as a whole? These aren't voting districts. We're not looking at build out of an area in the total population. We're looking at the students that are enrolled and living in the district, and making sure that we're aligning with who your students are.
Mr. President?
Yes, Megan.
So this is the homework, nerd student questioning me. Do you have like a worksheet you're gonna give us, or are we just looking at these guiding principles and writing our lesson? I'm just wondering,
No,
like,
just-
to start
As a group,
brainstorming.
consensus around.
I do think you
Sorry,
should give
as
Megan
a
a
group-
worksheet. Yes,
I understand.
definitely. 3-page paper, Megan. Single spaced.
And you get to be, and it's group work, and you're the leader.
Yeah.
No, just share back with district leadership about, you know, your concerns and key drivers behind this, things you'd like for, as a collective group, you'd like for us to consider as we move forward into that. Some of it's pretty low-hanging fruit in terms of capacity and utilization. That's why we're here. But if you've got some key drivers around student populations that we need to be aware of, some key drivers around transportation, specific things that come into that out of those 7 or 8 items that are there, what are the, you know, the key drivers in the guiding principles that you see that we should consider going forward, knowing that none of them can hold sway over the entire process. All of them will have to be balanced in some form or fashion, other than feeder patterns.
As well as an easy feeder pattern.
Yeah, this one's.
And we'll work through a consensus building exercise
Yeah.
just based on those 8 circles, actually about 7, because we won't do feeder patterns to basically say, okay, here's the board's parameters around these different areas. And some of them are gonna be pretty natural. I mean, they are what they are. Obviously, we don't want islands. We're not gonna have to spend a whole lot of time on some of them and others. So, and I think the other piece, and as we talked with the team, some people say, how quickly can you turn this around? We watched them do it in real time when they started to, the cabin team and they started to show us, this is how our software works. They basically just pick different zones, whatever you guys called those planning zones, and then they hit, you know, kind of redo, and all of a sudden, it tells you how many 3rd graders now are at EP Rock, and how many 4th graders, and how many 5th graders, and they can make those changes very, very quickly.
Good point on, I'm glad you brought that up, about that, you know, they're gonna spin it around too fast. They're not gonna consider this. The hard work's done on the front end of this. Getting the inputs, getting the information, locating the students, creating the study zones, making sure that your data is clean, that all your ingredients you're bringing into this cake, that's the hard work. And there have been, we applaud your district, and we've gotten good, clean data from you. There are some places where we're months in cleaning up the information. So the fact that we got good, clean data up front that we could bring into this process, then it is just a function of running the software and saying, and looking at neighborhoods and drawing those lines.
Thank you for your work, Maya.
Yeah, that. Calm down, Maya. You need to not talk so much.
Individual questions.
Okay, you mean not go on with the,
Yeah, do a recess before we go on to this.
okay, all right, that's it. Is it, are we C or no?
Well, yeah, we can hit on C. There's not much new on C. I mean, this is the biggest thing
Right,
with C,
okay.
but, you know, the next thing we have on our agenda, and it's just a brief update, we did send out the staffing survey. I don't know if Andrew wants to give a brief update, and then we'll take a quick recess before we go into closed session.
Yep, so we sent out the staffing survey to both the affected certified staff groups as well as our support staff, all of our support staff. And as of tonight, the survey closed, both surveys closed, and we have 230 239 support staff and 244 teachers that completed those surveys. So 483. I'm sure we'll have a few more stragglers come in overnight, and then we'll turn that survey off. And then we really start the tough work from there, where we start analyzing, reading all the information. I'm already sorting and filtering the different pieces so that we can make it as accessible as possible for all of our leadership teams. And then we're meeting both the subgroups of the support staff staffing committee and the certified staff staffing committee on December 15th. So we have those scheduled, and we're going to keep plugging ahead.
Okay.
Bonnie has some.
Yeah, and I think the operations committee and the logistics committee, we've also had a few meetings to start that process. So the principals are currently working on doing layouts of all their buildings, designating where classrooms will be next year, and then we're doing inventory of all the furniture and that thing. So those conversations have started. And Dustin and IT are also working with contracts to see the contracts that we have to adjust based on the reduction of sites. So that work has started as well.
I can share quick. We had a group of special ed teachers meet specific to transition planning for students with disabilities. We are meeting again tomorrow night after school to finalize some of those plans to share out with the larger group, then start sharing with families. So you'll see a lot more information to come soon as we have round 2 tomorrow night.
Then the group that is meeting about, we have a meeting for, with the elementary principals and to figure out the larger size of the group that is going to work on showcasing what's cool in our schools. And then also what we can do to honor the history and traditions of the 2 schools that are being closed. And we anticipate that that will include not just staff and families, but also community members. And actually, we've had some community members already reach out.
Any questions?
Mr. President, I'm just wondering if we'll be able to see the themes of that survey that you sent out as a board?
The staff survey?
Correct.
So the staff survey is related to where do they want to be. So it's not a survey, there's not a theme analysis, it's at least for the staff, and it's, a teacher would say, my preference is to be at this building, teach this grade level with this thing. So it's there's not themes associated with it.
Okay, I just thought that there was kind of some open-ended questions, so I
There
thought
were,
perhaps-
there are. So we could probably come up, because we do analysis of, okay, if with their order of priorities, how many are we able to accommodate? And so at some point in the process, we'll be able to, once we do the final placements, we'll have some of that data, as well as, I'm sure we can do some thematic, taking the personalized aspect away from it. Just reading some of the comments already, there's a lot of passion for their placements, and that a lot of things are considered. And so, we can try to work on something to give you guys a flavor of the information. There's no shortage of sharing, I would say. Just trying to fit it all in a document. I think they're very comfortable with letting us know, what they think is important as we're moving forward and making decisions.
Very good, thank you.
Just with the survey, so this was sent to the 4K through 5 teachers, and then was it sent to those staff who are considered K through 12?
Yes, it
as
was.
well?
Yep.
In art and PE or
Art,
certain
music,
things?
we have
Okay.
special ed, SLPs, school psychs, counselors, social workers, defined in the handbook, which we also included within our FAQ document that was produced. So that all of that information was there. And then support staff, it was all support staff, even the district-wide or like district office staff. We had a lot of questions about that pop up as well. But we sent it out to that full group, and then certainly encouraged them and had their supervisors encourage them to complete the survey as well.
Okay, thank you. We'll go into a recess for 10 minutes and then come back and we'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.